Hello everybody, it's Stephen here for the Idiot Quilter and welcome to my weekly episode. This is episode number 274 for August the 20th, 2024, and hope everybody had a really great weekend and a great week last week. And let's jump right into what I've been working on. And just get the right buttons pushed here. I just, as an aside, I just rearranged all the buttons on my little Stream Deck, my Elgato Stream Deck, because I discovered something exciting. And you'll be seeing, excuse me, the results of that in as I make videos, especially when I'm on Zoom, because I can now tie in my OBS software into my Zoom. And it gives me all kinds of other potential possibilities with my camera system in my sewing room. But anyways, I digress. Let's talk about what you see in front of you right now. And what this is the Pumpkin Parade pattern by Stephanie Stitches. Great pattern. Goes together really quick and you can have a lot of fun with it. This is a very versatile pattern, I think, because you could make a really lovely Christmas quilt with this as well. I, of course, did Halloween since that was the theme of the pattern to start with. But if you look at it, you can see that I used gnome Halloween or fall fabric. I've had this in my stash for a while, didn't know what to do with it, and when I saw this pattern by Stephanie, I thought this would be a great one to use, and it is. Now, I have it on Lucy right now. In fact, yesterday I quilted it on Lucy. I ran into a few problems which have nothing to do with this pattern. It has everything to do with me as the operator of Lucy. Lucy and I were not communicating well yesterday, and that happens. With the two of us. We have a love-hate relationship. She loves to hate me. I love to hate her. But anyways, I have it still on the long arm. I finished the quilting yesterday. And as I said, I ran into a few little problems with my pattern, but I'll take it off, trim it up, make some binding for it, get it on, and have it ready for you next week, or maybe even later this week on So Chatty to show you and to maybe discuss some of the problems I had. And you may wonder, especially if you're new to my channel, why I point out things I've made mistakes on or had little oopses and things like that. I do that because it's part of the name of the channel, The Idiot Quilter, and I do it to show you, especially new quilters, that crap happens. And no sense crying over it. Just live with it. Fix it the best you can, and move on. I mean, it is a hobby. It's meant to be fun, so don't get too tied up when you make a mistake, because you will make a mistake. That is inevitable. And for me, I probably make more mistakes than the average person, so I share them with you. But anyways, I think this is really a cute quilt. Even though I've mentioned that I've made a few mistakes in the quilting on it, I don't think they will be very obvious, and it'll look fine. It'll quilt out, as they say. Okay, let's take a look at this one. This is the mess. This is Christmas Mess. I think that's the name of it. I think this is what I'm going to call this quilt, Christmas Mess. This is the Serger quilt. The one I did on the Serger, talked all about it on So Chatty last week, so I'm not going to go over all that again, but if you haven't seen that episode yet, do look for it, because I talked about my trials and tribulations with trying to use a serger to make a quilt. And since I put up that video on So Chatty, many of you have already mentioned to me too that they have tried doing a quilt on a serger and they've had mixed results. What I am finding is, for most people, if they're going to use a serger for quilting at all, they use it for attaching their binding to their quilt. And that's just attaching it to the back of the quilt, then pulling it to the front and finishing it on their sewing machine. And a lot of people like to do that because they have arthritis in their hands, or they just don't have they've got some kind of physical problem that, is really aggravated when they're trying to do something like push a heavy quilt through a sewing machine to put binding on it. And I get that. And, my idea of tools is whatever works for you works. There aren't any tool police. Okay. But as for me, yeah, I am not going to pursue this any further. with Serger quilting. I didn't enjoy the process. I didn't enjoy the result. And it's just not for me. Simple as that. Okay. Now, this is the one that was a secret project. It is no secret anymore. This is the in the hoop embroidered monsters. Happy Halloween is what the quilt's called. It is based on a pattern that is out there, and I can't remember the lady's name, and I don't think I have it handy, and I do not, and I'm sorry about that. But this is a pattern that Kim McCowan, the moderator of the Facebook group called Atlantic Coast Embroiders, she worked very hard to digitize all of these characters. There are 12 of them in total. This took her a while. I'm sure she had a lot of frustrating moments because she's learning the software for doing this, and I've played around with digitizing software myself, and I know how steep the learning curve can be. And for this, very steep, but I think she did a wonderful job. And the one thing, and she sent me an email yesterday, she said she was sorry that I felt disappointed that she hadn't done the Happy Halloween banner part that was in the original quilt. She actually, I think, has done it, but she made it into another project. And I wasn't really disappointed. I just felt that, okay, so I'm left to my own devices now, which is perfectly all right. I made this quilt my own. And so this is a variation on it. And so the top and bottom borders with the pumpkins and the bats in it are my own creations, sort of. I didn't make the digitized files that produce the bat or the pumpkins. Those came from, I think, OESD. But I created those top and bottom borders to make the quilt a little bit more rectangular than square. And then I added the sashing. I decided to create the attic window effect around each one of the monsters as well. And now it's sitting out in my Lucy room for quilting. Now this already has quilting built into it. As you can see, if you look at some of the monster ones, you can see quilting in the background. But there isn't any quilting in the borders. There is quilting in the top and the bottom strips with the bat and the pumpkins in it. Hard to see in this picture, but I did put that in there as well. So when I say I'm going to put it on Lucy, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little tiny bit of scrolling quilting in the green parts of the window, just to add to the overall quilt. I don't think I'll do anything with the sashing because the sashing already is very busy with the scroll work and that. And I don't think I'll do anything in the outer border either. I don't know. I probably should, but I don't think I will. Just to finish it off, this is more of a wall hanging than a quilt. It is very heavy. It does not fold up easily because there's stabilizer in it, in behind each one of those monster pieces. And yeah, so, and it's never going to see a washing machine. So I'll finish that up, and like I said, may get it on to Lucy this week. That's what I'm trying for. And finish it up, and maybe I'll have it ready for next week. No promises, to show you what I did with it. But I did enjoy the process, but I always enjoy doing in the hoop embroidery. And if you have an embroidery machine and you're interested in all the things you can possibly do, I would suggest you check out the Atlantic Coast Embroiders Facebook group. Because that's a neat bunch of people. They're always sharing their ideas and their creations, and it's very, very inspiring. And as I said, that is moderated by Kim McCowan, and Kim is just a really creative individual and, you know, hardworking, I would say, from having done this design. Okay, what that takes me to next? Well, let me get the right button here. Okay. So we had sewing with Stephanie and Stephen last Wednesday, minus me. I was in Toronto at the Royal Ontario Museum Quilt Show, and I do have video to show you later on here in the episode today. But we're back to normal again. Both Stephanie and I will be here this Wednesday, so join us. Come and go as you please. It's a sew day. Work on whatever you want. Enjoy the fellowship of other like-minded people. We're a very fun group, and you never know what we're going to talk about. But if you're a little bit shy about coming to a group of strangers, within the first 10 minutes you will no longer be a stranger, and you will have a good time, guaranteed. So that's tomorrow, and the link is in the show notes. I had an emergency pop-up sew day on Saturday. Why was it an emergency? Because I found out on Thursday that Walter had a sew day of his own to go to, an in-person one with his group that sew garments, and that meant I'd be all by my lonesome. So I figured, okay, I don't want to sew alone, so let's sew with friends. And so I had a pop-up sew day. And lots of people were there, and we all had a great time. The next pop-up sew day tentatively is planned for Labor Day weekend, so it will be August 31st, the Saturday, unless my plans change, and I'll be sure to let you know. So there will be a link for that in my show notes on everything I put up next week, and I'll send out that link as well to anybody that's on the mailing list. And if you're not on my mailing list and wish to be on my mailing list, it's simple. Just click on the link, my contact information on the link in the show notes below. Somebody asked me how you get into the show notes. I know on YouTube it's not that obvious. If you go underneath the video, you'll see in the description box right below it, there'll be the start of a little bit of a subscription, but then you'll see the word more. Just click on that, and that expands that box, and you find all the links that I talk about in the episodes every week there, and you will find the link to my email address as well. So just send me your name, first and last, please, with the email address you wish to be contacted at, and I'll add you to my email list. I do not send out a whole lot of stuff all the time from that, because I'm not a business. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I just make you aware of when the next pop-up sew day is and when I have my retreats. And speaking of retreats, pencil in October the 19th. That will be the date for the fall retreat. Details will be coming out at the end of the month or in the first week of September for all of that. And so just keep it in the back of your mind, because we always have a really great time, and I feel it fills up very quickly, and it is a free event. Okay, what else happened last week? What did I get new? Well, I bought some fabric from Rhonda's Creations. Now, if you remember, Rhonda's Creations is a little store. Rhonda works out of her house in in Brighton. And she has an online site. You can go to it, just put in Rhonda's Creations. I have reviewed her site before here on the Idiot Quilter, and she has a good selection of fabrics at fantastic prices. And she was having a sale. And I thought I would take advantage of that sale to buy some fabric for backing some of my quilts. So you can see I bought 3 meters of the red snowflake Christmas ones, because I will have some Christmas quilts that will need to be backed. And I bought this Halloween fabric. Now, I couldn't get it in wide back, so I bought enough of it that I could piece it. And that's what I've put on the back of Pumpkin Parade. And I did piece the backing fabric using my serger this time. So, and actually that works out pretty good using your serger. You would think you would have a pretty thick seam. You don't. When you use a 4-thread overlock stitch on the serger, one of the stitches pulls the other stitches down tight. And with a little bit of pressing, it does lay very, very flat. So I had no problems quilting over the top of that joint. So that's great. I don't usually like to do a pieced backing, but sometimes I have to. In this case, I had to, because I couldn't get this fabric in wide back, and it worked out fine. No problems. So anyways, back to Rhonda. Rhonda has a sale once a year in around June, I believe. We went to it this year. Oh my God. It was so good. And I made a video of that, and you saw that back in June. Definitely will be going to that one again this year because her prices were just fantastic. Get there early because it is very busy. She has it outdoors under canopy in her driveway. Okay, let's go back here and let's talk a little bit about quilting on an embroidery machine. In fact, I think I'll talk about this in a little bit more detail on So Chatty this week, but I just want to say somebody proved to me that it can be done. And this is one of my subscribers, and it's a person that is a regular at Sewing with Stephanie and Stephen, and I'm swallowing my words partially because you know I've said you cannot quilt on an embroidery machine effectively. I have an exception to that rule, and I know, yes, you can if. And on So Chatty on Friday, I will fill in the if part, so stay tuned for that. Okay. Royal Ontario Museum, as I said, had a quilt show. They pulled up some quilts they had in their archives. I was a little disappointed in the show. There were only 12 quilts, but it was very interesting what they had. And I read everything they put up on the placards, and for me that's amazing because usually I go in a museum and I don't read. No, I just look at things. I probably should read. Well, I shouldn't say I don't read. If something really captures my attention and I want to know more about it, I will read the placards on what's there. But I did read these ones. Very interesting stories behind these quilts. I think they picked quilts that had a historical significance to events in Canada, or to politics or something like that. They really, though, most of them were very old quilts from the early to late 1800s. There were a few from modern times, again, had political connections to them, and that's fine. But it would have been nice if there'd been more quilts to see. It was, for us anyways, it's a bit of a hike into TO. We took the GO train, which is a commuter train here. And, we got in there and then walked up to the museum. We only walked one way, and we took the subway back down. It's a little further than we thought, but it was a nice day, nice walk. Yeah, we spent more time getting to the museum than we did in the museum. I wouldn't mind having spent the day at the ROM because I love the ROM. The ROM is a fascinating museum. So if you ever come to Toronto, it's a must-do destination, and give yourself at least half a day in the ROM, if not the full day. If you're a real museum person, you'll love it. I mean, they have everything. They have mummies. They have dinosaurs. I mean, it's in a way, it's kind of on the level of the British Museum in London. Yeah, I dare say that. So it's worth the visit. But we just went for the quilt show, and like I said, we were probably only at the quilt show for half an hour, and we got through it all. Okay, so anyways, I'm going to show you what we saw, and it's a little video clip, and I'm going to put it in here right now for you.
And we have arrived at the quilt show, and it's somewhere in here. I guess we go through those doors. So this one is Northern Lights, and it was entered into a quilt show in 1956. I'm not sure if she won a prize.
iconic quilt for Canada. It's got loons on it, which is one of our national birds, also featured on our loonie, the $1 coin, which is why we called it a loonie, because there's a loon on it. So this is a display of old templates and sketchbooks. And here's some cardboard templates, which were probably cut out of cereal boxes at the time. That's how my grandmother used to make her templates. A lot of little pieces on this one. And this one is called
Irish chain.
It's an Irish chain.
1870 to 1880.
And is that, oh yes, that's the actual quilt. So it's been
St.
dated.
Martin's, New Brunswick. Nobody knows who made it. Cotton, plain weave, printed fabric batting. 1870, 1880.
So this one is almost 150 years old. And of course it would have been all hand pieced in that period. And hand quilted too. See if I can blow this up a little bit so you can see the quilting a little bit more. A lot of patience then to do that. And now this one is the double Irish chain, and it was made in around 1900.
Ridgeway, Ontario. Cotton, plain weave.
This is a log cabin.
And East Florenceville, New Brunswick.
And the year of that was what? 1890s.
That's right.
We're taking a second look at this quilt, and if you take a look at the quilting, the intricacy of it, and that's all done by hand. And the sashing, they did feathers. This one is magnificent. Has an Aboriginal theme to it. And what's it called? The Tree of Peace. Now this one is a modern quilt. It was made in the 1990s. This was made in the early 40s. It's called a quilt top cover. This is a Red Cross quilt. Dutch 9-patch, Canadian Red Cross, 45 to 49, pieced around then. This is called the Casey House quilt, and this is in remembrance of people who spent the last days of their lives, who were dying from AIDS back in the 80s, and the Casey House was a hospice.
It's a Casey house quilt.
Yeah, but the strange thing about this quilt is it hasn't been quilted. It's a memorial quilt, as I said, for those who passed the last days of their lives at Casey House, the hospice for AIDS, victims of AIDS. And like the AIDS quilt, the big one, many of those are not quilted either because they're not necessarily made by quilters. They're made by people who just want to create a memorial piece. Now, the history of this particular quilt is that it was made in the same year that the Princess of Wales, Diana, visited Casey House. And she hit a lot of controversy with some parts of society because she took the hand of some of the people suffering from AIDS. And of course, there was a lot of paranoia back in those days about the transmission of AIDS and things like that. She was a very brave individual, but she was trying to show compassion, which is what these quilts show as well. This quilt commemorates a problem that we had here in our own country with Native people traveling outside of the country and their passports not being recognized. So, for example, it says here that the Haudenosaunee Nations, then the Iroquois Nationals lacrosse team, made headlines when the British government refused to recognize their Haudenosaunee, sorry, I'm saying that wrong, passports as legal travel documents. Later that year, a word I can't say, travelers, including the artisan, used passports to travel to Bolivia, but were denied entry back into Canada. So that's what this quilt commemorates. And the predates 1492 is when Columbus supposedly discovered America. But this tribe or this nation, this native nation, predates Columbus's discovery. This one is a crazy quilt, and I think it's a really good example of a crazy quilt. And the sign says, crazy quilts were fashionable style in the 1880s. They were artistic showpieces rather than everyday blankets made with irregular shapes and assorted silks, satins, or velvets placed on solid ground. Makers embellished them with embroidery, ribbon, or even paint, as you see here. At the center are photographic images on fabric of Mrs. Thomas Murray, the maker, surrounded by her 4 children. The elaborate border includes embroidered chrysanthemums, swans, cranes, reflecting the popularity of Japanese motifs at the time. And this quilt is dated at about 1884. So what's really interesting is the photographs in the center, because that would have been in the very early days of photography, and how they managed to transfer. I don't know if those are actually transferred onto fabric. They may be the actual photographs embedded into the fabric. But we don't think of photo transfer on fabrics as something that comes from that age. So it looks like it was probably a technique that started earlier than we thought, or at least I thought. Not really sure. And the placard does say that those are photographs transferred onto fabric, so I'm not sure how they did that. This one's called Faith and Comfort, and it's around 1860, and it's dated age. The original design depicts scenes from the life of Joseph from the Old Testament Bible. Joseph receives a coat from his father, which his brothers interpret as favoritism. In revenge, they sell Joseph into slavery. Despite this, Joseph remains unwavering in his faith in God and ultimately forgives his brothers. Designs that share religious teachings were and are popular with some quilt makers. While we don't know the intentions behind the particular quilt, it's possible the imagery was a source of comfort and a reminder of faith for maker and their family. The needlework is very fine detail, and it is a form of applique, and it looks almost like the applique have been given a three-dimensional effect, probably stuffed with some batting,
and sewn around, very much like trapunto.
So we are in the middle of a special exhibition bed cover. Usually consists of 3 layers. A bottom layer of plain material, often cotton, and then a layer of padding for warmth, and then a top layer, which is usually quite fancy. And it could be made of small little pieces of material or have a more formal design like this one. So this one is called an applique quilt because you can see that colorful pieces of fabric have been cut into shape and sewn onto a white background. But that's not all. Come and look closely. You may need to get close to the glass to see this. This quilt has been beautifully top stitched. And by that I mean that it's designed within the cut out pieces of material. If you look at the flowers, you can see that it's a pattern of a red flower made in thread inside those, and again outlines in the green areas of buds. So that's a lovely top stitching or quilting there. And it's made by a Canadian.
So as you can see, they're doing a tour as well with an explanation. You can sign up for that as well. We didn't. And it looks to me like this quilt was probably made from the same fabric or some of it that's in this top. And we'll see what it says.
When she became engaged, she began the quilt in order to take it into her room.
Best quilts like this one were the finest bed covers women brought into a marriage. They were a opportunity to show off sewing and design skills. The quilt contains a mix of fashion textiles from the mid-1830s. The bodice alone was made around 1838. It's pretty similar to the quilts and textiles, which indicates the bed cover was probably made around 1840 or later.
Next, we're going to go far back in time into the gallery of ancient Egypt. And these men was also involved in textiles.
Now, this is the quilt that the tour guide was talking about a little bit that I got on video a moment or so ago. But let's take a closer look. She said it's an applique quilt, and it most certainly is. And then she talked about the top stitching. And you can see that inside each of these red flowers. Exceptional work. And this comes from 1865. Wreath of Flowers. And it is a marriage quilt. Okay. This, I think, is the oldest quilt in the display, and you can see that it's been well used and worn through. And they probably have a sheet of unbleached muslin underneath of it to hold it all together. This would have to be handled with a great deal of care, and it comes from, according to the placard, 1830s to 1840s. So part of the conservatory process is to roll it, probably for storage, which would protect it from wrinkles and things like that that would wear through the fabric. Okay, this one looks almost like what we would call a pixelated quilt, but it's not. It is all half square triangles and a lot of half square triangles. As you can see when I get closer to it. All those tiny little half square triangles, which I think are only probably about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch. I wouldn't want to be the person trying to put that together. That would take a lot of patience.
It almost looks like there's a portrait.
Okay, so this placard for that quilt explains that there are over 8,000 light and dark triangles, each less than 2 centimeters long and hand-stitched together to create an intricate pattern from the smallest scraps.
The patient maker who sewed it worked outwards from the center, creating a series of rectangular frames that slowly increased to build a quilt. Now, what would be really interesting to know, and this comes from the 1880s, is how long it took. And this one is pretty in pink, variations on pink and green. At first glance, this pink and green textiles in this quilt look the same. Look closer, there are 8 different pink fabrics and 7 unique green prints. This quilt was made in the mid-1800s when advances in the textile industry created cheaper and more varied cotton prints. There's different colors of pink too, it says.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On this deal, it would be nice to see it in natural light.
This, by the way, is just where we came out of. That is known as the ROM, the Royal Ontario Museum.
So now we return to our regular programming on the episode, and that brings us to Subscriber's Quilt of the Week, and this is a good friend of mine. She's a good subscriber as well, and you have seen some of her lovely work before. It's from Colleen Pigeon, who lives in Charlottetown, PEI, and this is her another one of her most beautiful creations. This week's Quilt of the Week comes from one of my good friends and subscriber, Colleen Pigeon, who lives out in Charlottetown, PEI. And you know that about a year ago, we were out there and visited with Colleen and had a wonderful time. And Colleen sent this picture of her Art East quilt. This is the Alice in Wonderland quilt, and it is fantastic. And I really admire the people who have the patience to do one of the Art East quilts. I have done one of their quilts before, a more simple quilt pattern. They are great quilt patterns. They're well written, and the end result is, well, take a look. You can see how spectacular they are, and Colleen's is definitely spectacular. The thing I admire most about Colleen's work here is there's a lot, and I mean a lot, of little tiny pieces that you have to sew together. If you're not familiar with Art East quilt patterns, they are really great, as I've said, but you have to have the patience to work with little pieces, because this is all patchwork. It is not applique. But the end result is, I think, worth the effort. Just not for me. I'm too impatient. But Colleen obviously has the patience of a saint, and she worked her way through it. And the end result, well, Colleen, this is absolutely stunning. I don't know what your plans are for that quilt, if this is going to be a gift or if you're going to keep it for yourself or whatever. But I hope whatever you do with it, it doesn't go into a corner somewhere. It needs to be on display. Thanks, Colleen, for sending that to me, and I look forward to seeing your future projects as well. So I mentioned about trying to quilt on my serger, and part of that has been inspired, if I use that word for this, by a video I saw that was touting the properties of the new Bernina serger that they are marketing as the quilter's version of a serger. And so I found this video called So Fair 2024 Quilting on a Serger. And well, I'll let you be the judge if you sit through the whole hour and a half, if you actually watch the video, as to whether or not it is worth the money to buy this serger and whether or not you would actually use it to quilt on. But in the meantime, here's my review of that video clip. This week's YouTube video is a presentation that was done by a lady by the name of Pam Mahashi for the Bernina Company. And Bernina has come out with a new serger, a very elaborate, very expensive serger. It's a combination serger cover stitch machine, and it runs in around something like $8,000 Canadian or something like that. That's a lot of money to spend for a serger. But this particular video shows you how to use this serger to create a quilt. Yes, to do quilting on your serger. What attracted my attention was the fact that I have just finished doing a quilt on a serger, and if you saw So Chatty last week, you know my thoughts about that process. This to me is a video that is more of a sales gimmick to sell sergers, to increase the sale of sergers to quilters who would not consider using a serger for their quilting. And I question whether or not this is more a sales pitch than a technique type of video. You be the judge. So if you've ever wondered about making a quilt on a serger, especially Bernina's new one, then you're going to want to take a look at this video called So Fair 2024 Quilting on a Serger. So, future projects. In Pieces by Tracy Perks. And this is a really cool pattern, and Tracy Perks is a really cool designer. Very different. I interviewed her back several months ago, so you might want to look up that interview because she is fascinating. She lives on and works on a boat that travels the canals of England, and she has some really cool designs of patterns, and this is one of them. It's called In Pieces, and well, here's what I have to say about that. This week's future project is a pattern done by someone that I interviewed some time ago and who is now working with Stephanie of Stephanie Stitches to do a sew-along for this particular pattern, and it's called In Pieces Quilt Pattern. And if you're not familiar with Tracy Perks patterns, they are lovely, but very easy because they're made up of squares and half-square triangles, and they are so easy to put together. A fair amount of cutting for these, but the end result is well worth it. I am going to do this pattern as well. I don't know if I'll do it along. I don't think I'm doing it along with Tracy and Stephanie because I probably can't keep up, but I definitely want to do this one. And at first, I didn't think about purchasing the pattern because I've already got so many projects, and I thought, do I need another one? Although I think it's very, very lovely. But then I got thinking about Christmas, and I think this would make a fantastic Christmas quilt, or wall hanging actually, because it isn't really that big. I think it measures, well, no, it's actually a pretty good size. It's about 60 by 60. So yeah, this is a quilt. But I think I can do it fairly quickly. And as I said, I think it would make a great Christmas quilt. So I do have a link for this in the show notes below if you want to purchase one for yourself. And as I've said, Tracy Perks patterns from her company, Rope and Anchor Trading, are always very well written, and the results are stunning. Now, Stephanie of Stephanie Stitches has met Tracy, and she's doing a sew-along with Tracy's pattern In Pieces. I have bought the pattern as well, and I will be on Saturday afternoon around 4 p.m., I believe, on Stephanie's channel, working with Stephanie on In Pieces. I have already started it. In fact, you can see a little piece of it at the very top of my design board, 2 rows of it, just that red and green little triangles that are peeking up. So yeah, so join us. So check out Stephanie's channel on Saturday around 4 p.m. and join Stephanie and I for a live event as we work on In Pieces by Tracy Perks. Okay, that takes me to online quilt stores. And this week is one I'd never heard of before, and it popped up on my screen when I was doing a search for Canadian online quilt stores. And it's called Quilt Bitz. This week's quilt store online is called Quilt Bitz, and they're located in Cranbrook, BC. And this is one that just happened to pop up on my search engine. I have never heard of it before. So let's check it out together, shall we? So this is their homepage, and they say browse new arrivals. They have Moda fabric, Willow's Farm, and here's some samples of it. And they have an FQ club, Fat Quarter Club. And then some more fabric. These, I guess, are all their new fabrics. They have a clear out happening, and they have a newsletter. Okay, well, let's pop up then to the top of the page, go into fabrics and see how this is organized. Oh, I am not really happy with the way it's organized, because it's organized and it seems solely by the name of the company. Well, as long as you know the name of the company, that's fine. They do have Moda, they have Art Gallery. Art Gallery fabrics are very, very popular, and if you've never used Art Gallery fabrics, they have a really nice feel to them. Henry Glass, I like Henry Glass as well. They usually have some unique things. Hoffman, Poppy Cotton I'm not familiar with. Ruby Star I have heard of, but I don't think I've ever had ordered any of them. And Stuff, I'm not sure if that's the name or initials for something. And Paper and Cloth. Well, let's go into Art Gallery. Okay, this means I need to know the name of the line if I was searching for something specific. Otherwise, I can just browse. And this is a charm pack. No, it's a layer cake. $49.99, marked down from $69.95. Well, that's not a bad price, I don't think, for a layer cake. But let's go back up and see what more we can find in Art Gallery. Okay, layer cake. I have a distinct feeling that this particular store only sells fabric as... Oh no, here we go. No, they do sell it by meterage as well. Okay, $4.75 Canadian. I imagine that's for a quarter meter. That's for a fat quarter. Okay. So what if I want... You order yardage by a quarter yard. Example, half a yard is 2. Okay. So this is a little... Okay, you click on that for it. So $4.75 a quarter yard, that's what? Let's do the math here. It's about $20. Just under $20 a meter. Yeah, it is Moda. It is higher end fabric that they're selling, and that price isn't bad in terms of the Canadian dollar and what fabric's going for. Okay, so let's go back up here to fabric and let's check the Henry Glass out and just see. And that's on sale for $15 a quarter meter. Okay. Not a lot there to choose from, though. It seems that they have a very limited selection of fabrics. Hoffman Batiks are $4.35. So it looks to me like most of their fabrics are around $20 a meter, which is middle of the road price-wise here in Canada. Okay, they do have basics and blenders. Separate section. It's all Moda. So if you like Moda, they've got lots of Moda. $4.65. Okay. And a fairly good selection, too, of that. Moda Grunge. $4.40. So yeah, prices are on average about $20 a meter. Bella Solids. Okay, so they don't have a bad selection of solids and blenders. Fabric-wise, more of the high end. I don't know this company at all. $4.35. Kind of interesting, though. Okay. Let's check out their pre-cuts and kits. Jelly rolls. Yeah, they say that these they make it look like they're on sale, but this is a typical trick of most online stores. They show one price with a line through it, making you think this is on sale, but the price that's actually here is the regular price. And it's average. the price. Again, not much of a selection in the jelly rolls. What else do they have? Charm packs. Supposedly on sale. I'm not really sure about that. Yeah, again, probably pretty much the standard price. And they have a few more to choose from on here. What's this? Little Bitz rolls. Looks like something they put together themselves. They have two. $24.95. Looks like, does it describe what you get in this? Not really, no description. Maybe if I click on it. These little rolls are fun, useful, and dynamic. Idea number: the strips can be cut into 5 by 5 inch squares. You can also cut 5 inch by 42 inch strips into 2. Okay, they're telling you different ways you can basically cut the fabrics up. So I've got a feeling that these are sort of the end. Oh, here we go. 10 5 inch by 42 inch strips. Okay, that's kind of unique. 10 of them. And it's nice that they give you a suggestion here of how to use them, how you can get the most out of them by the way you cut them. $24.95. It's not a bad price. I don't know. You'd have to work out what you pay for yardage and figure out according to 5 inch strips. But kind of a unique idea. Okay, they do have, let's go back to the kits here. They have bundles. And again, price-wise, about what you'd expect. Nothing bundle box, poppy ones. Yeah. Not a bad selection there. Some interesting things. Okay. Surprise, a Quilt Bitz surprise pack. Shipping is included. $29.95. Do you love receiving happy mail in new fabrics? Do you need to add some new color and prints to your stash? Do you need a little extra motivation every month to try new fabrics? Fabric mail is the best mail. Everyone loves happy mail. These surprise packs contain at least 2 yards of fabric and maybe up to 2.5, maybe made of fat quarters, quarter, okay, basically end cuts. Each collection will somewhat coordinate in all our quality. Quilting cotton from Moda, etc. There may be the end of a collection, or a little of this, or a little of that. Taxes are not included in the pricing. Okay, so $29.95, 2 meters to 2.5. Oh, I just noticed this. They are not in meters, they're in yards. They sell their fabric in yards. So again, I have a thing about that with a Canadian company. So $30 for possibly only 2 yards of fabric. That's $15 a yard. Well, that's not terrible, but they're all bits and pieces, so I don't know. I think you're taking a chance there. Might be fun. Okay, they said kits. I don't see any kits. Right? Let's see what the Bitz Fat Quarter Club's all. Monthly Fat Quarters, mail out, club members only. Okay, club members only. I guess you have to join. Does that cost you something? Let's see. Oh, they've got different selections here. Okay, $22.95. If you get 4 fat quarters, one for each month. So that's pricey on the fat quarters. That's about $5 and something. Fat quarter. You can get it every 3 months. $61.95. Okay, what does that mean? That means okay, so for 1 month it'll cost you $22.95. If you want to do it for 3 months, it's going to cost you $61.95. 6 months, $116.75, and up from there. Okay. Let's go to patterns. And what do they have? Well, some interesting things here. Some kind of unique, look like applique, a lot of them. Was there anything under that category? Nope. Notions, machine and long arm thread. Okay. Confetti, $14.95 for, I'm not how, for 1,000 meters. And a couple of glides. Okay. And that's it. Okay, really nothing much there. They have a clear out. Ooh, $1.49, $2.49, $1.89. Okay, is that? It's a fat quarter. Okay, but nevertheless, fat quarter for $1.49. That's pretty good. They have a fair number, 20 pages of these. Let's go to the last page, see if the prices are going up. $2.49, $3.79, $3.49. Actually, not bad. There might be some things there that you get a bargain on. Okay, so what's their shipping policy? Let's take a look. Do they have a section about that? Shipping, there it is right there in the small print. Said they're an extremely small business. Yes, I would say so. By their collection. Shipping within Canada. They're done by Canada Post. Flat rate shipping, $16.95. Free shipping if you buy over $250 worth before taxes. Okay, well, shipping is pretty much standard. Flat rate $16.95. That's not terrible. Yeah. So I guess we have done it. They have gift cards as well. That's nice to know. So that's Quilt Bitz. Maybe there's something there that attracts your eye. Check them out. Okay, so that brings me to the end of this episode. And what's coming up? Well, don't know. Well, my usual videos of the week will be coming up. Pop-up sew days, August 31st. I am planning one probably in the middle of September as well, because we do have an advanced date for when Walter goes off on his sew days. You'll kind of wonder why I have pop-up sew days when Walter can't be at them. Because I don't want all the attention to fall on Walter. No, that's not it. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. No, because that's usually he's gone. And like I said, it's like the emergency pop-up sew day. I need people to sew with. And you're it. So anyways, that's coming up. I've already had the advance notice about the fall retreat, but more details coming for that soon. I can't think of anything else, but I'm sure there will be something because, you know, I do not live a boring life, I'm happy to say. In fact, if anything, I have so many different things to do on any given day. I don't know how I managed to get things done when I used to work. And I don't work anymore. I'm retired, as you well know. In fact, come September, I'm starting my 13th year of retirement. Holy crap. Where's the time gone? Yeah. But anyway, speaking of time gone, my time is up here. So, hope you have a great week. Tune in to So Chatty on Friday, and of course, Stephen and Walter Live this coming Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern. And have a great week. Bye for now.